Hello, didn't the weather change suddenly as here I am in my jumper? Well, today I would like to say very well done to 3 of the learners from class. And here we have a certificate for Arazi, who has completed successful work on Google Classroom. And well done for your mark there, Arazi. Very good. And here we have a certificate for Sarah. Yes, excellent work in managing both the Google Classroom and Class on Teams. Well done, Sarah. And the next certificate is for Carolina. Well done, Carolina. You work so hard and it's really great to see you getting onto the classroom and completing that work. And for today, we're going to go over to the classroom and learn some more about what we call small talk. And we're also going to see a quick reminder of last week's work about likes and dislikes, because Sarah sent us some work that shows what she likes and dislikes, and what her daughter likes and dislikes, and we'll be showcasing that. So, off to the classroom. Hello, and we're going to begin our class with showcase today. Yes, our showcase, looking at the work that you or your children have done during lockdown. Do you remember last week in class I asked you to think about things that you liked and things that you don't like, and to make a list of those things? Well, Sarah has sent in the information, and we have a very interesting list of things that Sarah likes and things that her daughter likes. And you can see where I've coloured in where there's a similarity. So, Sarah likes chocolate cake, but Sarah's daughter only tells me that she likes chocolate. I wonder if people who like chocolate also like chocolate cake. And what about watching films? Is that similar to watching TV? And then thinking about winter, if Sarah likes the winter and Sarah's daughter likes the snow, that's a similarity, isn't it? Because we usually get snow in the winter, although, as you know, our weather in England is variable. What about the dislikes? Yes, things that Sarah doesn't like and things that Sarah's daughter doesn't like. Oh, look, there really is something that is the same. Lockdown. And you might not like lockdown either. So the point of these charts is to show you that when you're talking to other people, if you've thought about things you like and things you don't like, you usually find that somebody else thinks in a similar way. So that would make an excellent conversation about lockdown or some of the things that people like. So well done, Sarah, and well done to your daughter too. Let's move on to class for today. And in our class today, we're going to look at polite conversation. So polite conversation is sometimes called small talk. You complete this small talk with people you don't know. So what could you talk about with people that you don't know? You could talk about the weather, yes. Transport. You could talk about in lockdown the changes to the rules on our transport. You could talk about sport, and if you're like me and you really don't like football because you can't see the point of the game, this can make a really interesting conversation, just the same as conversations with people who like that sport. You could talk about family. You could talk about films, and how you talk is more important than what you talk about. So in today's lesson, this lesson, we'll cover non-verbal language. Small talk and fillers. If you haven't heard that word fillers before, these are the things that we do when we're talking in English and we're thinking or giving us space to say, we haven't really finished yet, but I want to add an idea. And you probably find that you do a similar thing in your first language. So don't forget the questions that you need to ask to keep conversation flowing. So even in small talk, the most important questions for small talk are why, when, where, and what. And this makes your listener think that you're really interested in what they have to say. So how do you show interest if you're not actually speaking to somebody you know? And one of the ways you can do this is through non-verbal behaviour. Non-verbal behaviour is anything that doesn't include saying words. So, non-verbal communication, which is the same as conversation. How you're linking with somebody else is the use of communication without speaking. And we often use non-verbal communication at the same time as when we speak. So don't forget the things that you do and the way that you hold your body and the sounds that you make give out signals and ideas to the person who's listening to you, as well as the words that you say. So body language, how you hold your body, whether you're folding your arms, whether you're standing up, whether you're tapping your feet. Facial expression, I love the smile, because when somebody's smiling, to me, that means they really are interested. The gesture, if you're pointing or you're moving your hands about, what are you doing that for? And the posture, how you hold yourself, very important. So this reminds me of a phrase that used to be used when I was a child. Actions speak louder than words. And I think this is still important, because remember, people will think something about you according to what they see. So if somebody is tapping their foot, they might just be doing this to music. But if they're talking to you and that tap is a continuous rhythm, it's most likely a sign of boredom or irritation to want to move. So be careful about tapping the feet. And what about folding the arms? Folding the arms, especially if you have an expression like this gentleman, folding the arms is really saying, keep away from me, I'm not really agreeing with you. And jumping in the air or flailing your arms about, moving your arms about, often in excitement. So what about those faces? Because facial expressions can give away your real mood and emotions. So if you're going, I'm not happy, totally opposite to what you're saying. So don't smile if you're not happy, but also remember that many of us smile even though inside our own homes we are carrying greater sadness. So smiling doesn't always mean you are happy, but when you are talking to somebody, a smile is really connecting with that person, and that's good. And what about angry? I wonder how many angry mothers there have been during this lockdown, and how your children know that you're angry. And what about expressions, things that we say and how we say them, because how you say words is also important. We use the word exclaim. It's exclamatory if it's written down and it has a punctuation mark similar to the one there, which is your exclamation mark. But when we talk, we use the word exclaim. Oh no! So we have to give a better sound, a sound that's showing that we're either surprised or not happy, we're exclaiming, because we don't have an exclamation mark that we can wave about when we say this. So if we say, oh no, we can say it in lots of different ways because we're showing a sudden outburst of emotion. Oh no can be quite a downward sound, which is agreeing with the person who's speaking to say, I agree, this is bad. Oh no is a higher sound and is suggesting, I didn't know this and I don't think this is good. And what about that phrase, for goodness sake? And when you hear this spoken in an English conversation, you might pay attention to the space of sound between the words, because people don't always say, for goodness sake. They say, for goodness sake. This is a sound on the first letter of the words to emphasize, I'm really fed up with this. This is not good enough. For goodness sake, I've told you 100 times. And if you hear a parent say that, well, that's real exaggeration. But for goodness sake is showing that somebody is really fed up. And when somebody says, I understand, they don't usually use those words. They go, oh, I see. So I see means I understand what you're telling me. So what about spontaneous speech? That word spontaneous, it means something that happens without planning. And this is real speech, isn't it? When you're looking at small talk, talking to people that you don't know very well, you haven't actually planned what you're going to say. So you have to think about what you might want to talk about. So we said you could talk about the weather perhaps, but you might hesitate because you've not planned it and you're thinking. And in the English language, we use what are called fillers. So we say, oh, or sometimes people use the word like, and you've learnt the English language to understand what this word like means, and then you come across somebody who says, well, I went to the park like, and then at the park like, it was good like, and really like in that sense is being used as a filler, just a word that doesn't really mean anything. So do be sure that you understand the English conversation in terms of how we use fillers. And what about what we call hedging? This means we're not really sure, so we use the words perhaps or maybe. So if you are in a conversation and somebody says maybe, that just means they're not sure. Or if somebody says, perhaps this will happen, perhaps is showing they're not sure. So what about how we respond to something somebody else has told us? One of the things that you need to learn, especially if you've reached entry level 3 to level 1, are tag questions. So tag questions, you need to learn tag questions because they're a different way of asking a question. For example, the film was boring, wasn't it? So you're adding a negative, you're tagging a negative phrase on the end that becomes the question. So if you're not sure about tag questions, that's something you really need to revise. And don't forget feedback. To show you're listening, you need to show you're listening. That could just be smiling. It could be saying, yes, I know. And there's another phrase that's used differently, because when we use I know, we're talking about knowledge. However, we could also use it in conversation to mean I agree. I know. And it's how we say it that tells us what we really mean. And what about turn taking? Very important and also very hard, because all of us, myself included, want to get in on that conversation, and you sometimes end up talking over somebody else. And also you do come across people who do what we call domineer the conversation, who are saying far too much. So if you're looking at English exams, make sure that you are turn taking and that everybody is joining in and that nobody is domineering. That would be good. So what about the phrases he was like? That just means he asked. He was like, where are you going? Do you remember? I just said that to you about using the word like as a filler. And she was like, none of your business. And so really it ought to be, he asked, where are you going? And she yelled, none of your business. But in conversation, English people sometimes use that filler like for another word. What else do we do? Well, we say, I mean. I'm going to revise what I just said. So if I tell you something, then I say, I mean, I'm probably thinking I haven't explained it well enough. And remember that word like, we've mentioned it a couple of times this lesson. So you might be implying more than you're really saying. And when we say, oh, I'm really going to say something else that should have come earlier, but I forgot it. Oh, yes. And when we say, that filler, I'm going to delay briefly. And we use for this as well, but we're delaying for a bit longer. Yes. And sometimes you will hear English people actually hold on to that last sound. And do you know, we're saying, I'm inviting you to know this information, but I don't want to actually say it, you know. Oh, last week, you know. So remember that fillers are sounds, but they are also some words. And when you're learning English, this can be very confusing. So listen out for the sounds that people make and where those words come in the conversation, because we don't do this when we're writing. We don't use words in this way when we're writing. So that brings us to the three things that I want you to think about. Quality, how good it is. Well, don't say what you believe isn't true. And don't say something that actually there's no evidence for. We can't really prove that's true. And that leads us to think in our English conversation that when someone speaks to us, they're going to tell us things truthfully, and that what they say does need to be said. And that means your English conversation has quality. What about quantity? Yes, don't give any more information than you need to. And say what you need to say. This is very hard to work out when you're doing your English speaking exams. So think about when someone speaks to us, we're assuming that they're not holding anything back that's important. So everybody is saying what they consider to be important. And they don't give more information than is asked. and it's particularly important when you're learning English to keep to the topic. So to talk about the things that you're supposed to and not do what we call go off topic, talk about everything else. Thirdly, we need to think about manner, the manner in which we speak, how we say things. Be clear. Avoid saying things others don't understand. And be brief. Be short enough for other people to take a turn in the conversation. And be orderly, so talking in the correct order. Great, you do that already. So when somebody speaks to us, we assume that what they say, they are saying in as straightforward a way as they can. Fourthly, think about your relevance. Is it relevant? And this means, is it closely connected to what you're both talking about? So if somebody is talking to you about the weather, you're not talking about the film. That would be very confusing, wouldn't it? So when somebody speaks to us, we assume that what they say is relevant to the conversation. So think about being true, being brief, being clear and being relevant. And if you're working at a higher level of English, possibly at GCSE level, then you will know these as being Gricean Maxims. But they apply to all of us. So when we're practicing, remember, practice, practice, practice improves. So use non-verbal responses. Show the person you're talking to that you're listening. You could nod your head. You could shrug to show, I don't know. You could tap your foot if you needed to. And you could gesture. If you want to show something, you can point to it, or you can gesture, use your hands to add ideas. And remember how to use fillers. I really don't like that filler like, probably because I don't speak in that way, so I don't litter my speech with the word like. But I would ask you to think about, do you sometimes say or to allow yourself to think further? And if you do, that's great. Don't overuse it. So, do you say, you know? Oh, well, last week, you know. I don't say this. You might hear somebody who's speaking English say this. You have to choose, is this something you would add to your conversation? I think is a lovely way to actually add ideas. That's the end of our work this week. I wonder whose work we will be showcasing next week. Send your work to me and we'll see. Bye now.